YouTube. As we know that World Philosophy Day is annually observed on the third Thursday of November, and it is celebrated to honor philosophical reflections around the world. This day underlines the enduring value of philosophy for the development of human thoughts for each culture and each individual. So every year, School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies commemorate this day, as this day celebrates the enduring value of philosophy for the development of human thought. We know that philosophy is a discipline that encourages critical and independent thoughts and is capable of working toward a better understanding of the world and promoting tolerance and peace. Though I'm not an expert in the field of philosophy, but I can say that philosophy is an inspiring discipline as well as everyday practice that can transform societies. By awakening minds to the exercise of thinking and the reasoned confrontation of opinions, philosophy helps to build a more tolerant, more respectful society. Therefore, it helps to understand and respond to major contemporary challenges by creating the intellectual condition for change. So, on this day, we are very much honored by the gracious presence and blessings of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nageshwar Rao sir. We feel extremely fortunate by the gracious presence of two very eminent personalities in the field of philosophy. And I extend a very warm welcome to our honored, esteemed guest, Professor Rameshan Sinha sir, who is former chairperson of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, and Mridul Miri sir, who is Padma Bhushan, former MP Rajya Sabha, and former Vice Chancellor of NEHU, Shillong. Thank you, sir, for gracing this occasion and sharing your knowledge and word of wisdom with us. So the theme of this year's World Philosophy Day is the human of the future. And basically it aims at transformation of human lives. This theme basically diverges upon the constant evolution of concept of humanity. And basically in this highly digitalized and hyper-technologized world. So this day basically aims, or this theme basically reflects how to ensure the positive impacts of science and new and emerging technology on humanity, and how to rethink the relationship between human and technology. As we all know that science and technology, through its various technology, whether it is artificial intelligence or other method, it's play a very pivotal role in meeting the most pressing demands of and needs of mankind. It is also ensure that only through science and technology, we can ensure that the benefits which we are getting through the technology, through science and technology, it can be shared by all the person, regardless of their race, gender, nationality, or any other criteria. So this technology progress has led to the entry into our lives of intelligent machines, and they are capable of self-learning, automated work, but they have put a huge effect on humanity. Whether the humanity will be able to survive, whether all the ethics, how will able to survive in this technological world, what is the way forward, what is the solution of this ethical dimensions, which basically, in my opinion, which lies on the dialogues, deliberation, discussion, and how we can prevent the misuse of technology. What are the ethical issues related to this, and how we can develop the robust policies by dialogues, by discussions, by deliberation, and how we can combat its malicious use. So with this theme, on this World Philosophy Day, we are looking forward for the words of wisdom by our esteemed speakers on the topic, ethics, Indian and Western, and ethics of compassion in the postmodern society. So as we can learn, to respond more effectively to the challenges that are confronting humanity today. With these words, I once again welcome all the esteemed participants for this webinar and sincerely thanks everyone for joining us today on this webinar. With these words, I invite Professor Nandini Sinha Kapoor, who is Program Coordinator of MA Philosophy and BA Philosophy, to please introduce our esteemed guest of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sachi Shahji, for a wonderful welcome address. Now it's my turn to introduce the esteemed speakers. Respected Vice Chancellor Sir Professor Nageshwar Rao ji, respected invited speakers Professor R.C. Sinha ji and Professor Mrinal Miri ji, respected Pro-Vice Chancellors, respected directors of the school, respected faculty members and officials of IGNOU and dear participants. Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, the former chairperson of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, has been the professor and head of the Department of Philosophy, Patna University. He obtained his PhD from Banaras Hindu University and was awarded Senior Fellowship by Indian Council of Philosophical Research to work on the project Religious Identity and the Concept of the Other. In about 40 years of teaching and research, he has written 3 books and edited 5 books. He is the chief editor of Darshanik Traimasik, a quarterly journal of Akhil Bharatiya Darshan Parishad, and also the chief editor of Philosophical Quest. Simant Naitikta, or Subaltern Morality, is his new contribution in the field of applied philosophy. He was a member of Senate and Syndicate of Patna University. He has received J.P. Loknayak Samman from Vice President of India, Vidya Bhushan Award from Vidvat Parishad Varanasi for his consistent and continued contribution to academic activities. A felicitation volume entitled Dimensions of Applied Philosophy has been published by Akhil Bharatiya Darshan Parishad to honor his contribution in the world of philosophy. He was the former fellow of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla, and former president of Patna University Teachers Association. He has visited United States of America, United Kingdom, Canada, South Korea, Athens, and Iran for delivering lectures in academic seminars and conferences. With that brief introduction of Professor Sinha ji, now we invite Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji to deliver his speech as a guest of honor. His topic is Ethics of Compassion in Postmodern Society. Sir.
First of all, I extend my namaskar to each and every one. Namami Saraswati Devi Vidya Buddhi Samarjanim Satyam Vasme Kanthe Karo Kripahe Devi. I must extend my thanks to organizers who have put me in a very happy situation since Professor Mrinal Miri and the Vice Chancellor, the great Vice Chancellor of your university, are in the panel. I had been to Delhi several times, and perchance I know Professor Mrinal Miri since long, and that is a great strength for me. He's a wonderful man, and to speak before him is a great opportunity. He had been member of the parliament also. He had been fellow of the Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Shimla, and at that time I was very young. And if my memory does not bluff I presented a brief paper under his chairmanship in the Shimla. So and these are the old things, but I am very much elated to be with Professor Mrinal Meri and Professor Rao. Let me come to the theme. The theme which I am trying to discuss can be captioned as ethics of compassion. So to say, in the postmodern age, or to rephrase it, we can say that compassion in the new normal society. So the new normal society is certainly a postmodern society. So, am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Oh, so there was a disturbance. Some pictures were not to be seen. Anyway, so I am talking that ethics of compassion. So first of all, this one question came to my mind. Where we situate this compassion in the framework of ethics. I consider ethics, I just attempt to divide ethics under normative ethics and applied ethics, only two heads. There may be some more heads. And certainly applied ethics, professional ethics is under applied ethics. But for my convenience, I understand ethics under two heads, normative ethics and applied ethics. And in normative ethics, we have got virtue ethics as well as theory of obligation. So this topic, compassion comes under virtue ethics. So compassion is a virtue. So naturally, and being a student of philosophy, I would like to streamline the concept of compassion first. Compassion means suffering with others. This can be plausible definition of compassion. To suffer with others. So Vivekananda says that man has to live for others. But this compassion virtually envisaged by as a full-fledged concept by Lord Buddha. But before that also, even in Valmiki Ramayana, even says Valmiki, he saw the event of the crotch and how mercilessly a hunter shoots on loving birds. And he was empowered by the sensibility of the compassion. And out of that, he wrote a great epic, Ramayana. Everybody knows it, but Mahatma Buddha and even in Jainism, we find this full-fledged concept of compassion. Compassion can be understood. A philosophy or a philosopher understands concept through comparison, through analysis, and philosophizing is a sort of conceptualizing, and conceptualizing needs clarification, and clarification can be done through comparison. So naturally, there are three other concepts very akin to compassion, very much interrelated to compassion. One is the love. So what is the distinction between the love and compassion? And how the compassion is very much relevant in the new normal society. I think the new normal society is under the postmodern society. After Corona, we can think of a new normal society, which is certainly the present prevailing society. Actually, due to pandemic, the entire humanity was shattered. The entire humanity was shattered, and we lost the normal go of the life. So this, very many, you can say, journalists, they have used the term new normal, but they could not build the concept. And a philosopher has got a definite task. A philosopher constructs concepts. He gives new meaning. But he takes material from the society. One thing, I would like to make a distinction between modern and the postmodern. So modern age was the age of machine, and the postmodern age is certainly the age of technology. And there are certain postmodern thinkers. They celebrate pluralities. This is not bad. Celebrating pluralities, it is quite good. Because India celebrates diversities. India is land of diversities. We talk about unity in diversities. So modern age has got three characteristics. One is the universalism, The other is a structuralism. And third is the rationalism. Postmodernity deconstructs structuralism. It deconstructs universalism, and certainly rationalism too. So postmodernism believes in relativism. Even in ethics, in the ethical world, postmodernism, the great celebrated thinker like Derrida, he does not believe in the Kantian universalism. A great postmodernist, Francis Fukuyama, he has written a book, The End of the Order. Francis Fukuyama, he has written a great book, The End of the History. And the endism is very much loved by postmodernists. And thank God that they have not declared philosophy as dead. They have not declared philosopher as dead. But postmodernism conceives endism. I don't criticize. Postmodernism has got certain benefits also. Because after the collapse of communism, the communism believed in the structure, universalism, rationalism. But communism collapsed. I mean, Russia, the representative of communism, collapsed. And then in the 21st century, this postmodernism emerged, and it stipulates going back to tradition. And certainly, any sort of creativity cannot be without going back to tradition. So, Habermas stipulates that postmodernism goes back to religion. The religion which was de-established, deconstructed in the modern age has been recovered, and we are prone to go to religion. This is the I personally had a chance to meet Professor Habermas in Athens, and I had a conversation. And so these are the, but here, this endism can be restricted. The cult of endism advocated by postmodernism, there are certain benefits and certain good things of postmodernism, which I am not going to dwell because of the constraint of time. But this cult of endism can be restricted if we go back to our Indian tradition. The world is looking towards Indian tradition. Even Francis Fukuyama, in his book, The End of Order, suggests that if we want to save humanity, we have to look back to India, especially the Indian family system. The relations are being disrupted. Francis Fukuyama, he has also written a good book, The Great Disruption. The historical process is under disruption. So if we want to get rid of the social disruption, historical disruption, then we have to go back to India. In that book, The End of Order. And if we want to maintain the order, we have to go back to India, and especially this virtue ethics of, namely compassion. Now, compassion can be understood in two ways. Compassion, one is empathy. One component, compassion is a concept, and one component is empathy, and the other component is sympathy. And sympathy is feeling towards others. And in Corona period, when laborers were coming back to their home, even village home, the gates were closed. You can imagine the suffering during the Corona period when when laborers could not enter into their villages and they have to spend the whole night under sun and moon, whole day and night. So this was the tragedy. So feeling towards others, compassion is required. In the postmodern age, compassion becomes very essential to save the humanity. So, but compassion, how a selfish man can serve others? The question is there. So empathy is a feeling into. So unless and until you feel for others, you feel into, you cannot feel towards others. So here I can suggest somebody may raise questions and why we should be sympathetic to others. What makes man? Bentham has spelled out that a man cannot sacrifice his little finger for others. So if this is the nature of the man, then how he can help others? How he can be sympathetic towards fellow beings? So certainly here, I would refer Shankaracharya. I will refer his book, Atma Bodh. So only the person who has got Atma Bodh, or the person who is enlightened, or the person who is a Bodhisattva, he can be in a position to have sympathy for others. So the upshot is that in this new normal society, we have to imbibe the virtue of compassion, love. Love has got narrow meaning. A father can love his daughter. The husband can love wife. But there is a limitation. Compassion is free from all these sorts of love. So naturally, I submit in the end that we need. Compassion is not mercy. ये दया नहीं है, करुणा दया नहीं है। और जिन लोगों ने महात्मा बुद्ध के दर्शन को पढ़ा जाना है, तो मित्रता करुणा ये ब्रह्म विहार उनका वो that is another issue. So karuna is very much important, stipulated by Mahatma Buddha, and he also became Buddha from Siddhartha to Buddha because he happened to see a sick man, an old man, a dead man, and he was overwhelmed with the compassion. Thank you very much. I must extend my thanks to organizers. I must extend my namaskar to the Vice Chancellor as well as to Professor Mrinal Miri. Please, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, for a very enlightening and a very engaging speech that you have delivered as a guest of honor. We are indeed honored to have you with us. A very brief gist of your speech. Professor Sinha ji defined compassion as suffering with others. He also mentioned normative ethics and applied ethics, among other issues. Postmodernism, which is the age of technology and rationalism, has emerged as a strong reaction against the entire modern European movement in philosophy. Professor Sinha ji has taken up Francis Fukuyama as a representative thinker of postmodernism. However, there is a difference in approach in text of Buddhism and postmodernism. The postmodern philosophers run the risk of being understood as anarchical on account of proclamations made like the end of ethics by Foucault. Professor Sinha ji does not subscribe to the view of endism. He thinks postmodern way of doing philosophy requires to be examined, something which he has done in his speech. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, before I invite our very, very esteemed keynote speaker, Professor Mrinal Miri ji, let me introduce him very briefly. Professor Mrinal Miri ji, Padma Bhushan and former Vice Chancellor of NEHU, obtained MA degree in philosophy from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi, and went on a scholarship to Cambridge University to obtain his PhD under late Professor Bernard Williams. He taught for some time in St. Stephen's College and then moved to Shillong and set up the Department of Philosophy in the newly established Central University of Northeastern Hill University. He retired as a Vice Chancellor of this university in 2005. Prior to becoming the Vice Chancellor, he was the Director of the Indian Institute of Advanced Study at Shimla from 1993 to 1999. Professor Miri has been a member of bodies like University Grants Commission, Indian Council of Social Science Research, and Indian Council of Philosophical Research. He has also been a chairman of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research. He has been a visiting professor in several universities. In 2008, Professor Miri ji was appointed the chairman of the Forum of Vice Chancellors of the Central Universities of Northeastern Region by the Government of India. He was the chairman of the Center for Studies of Developing Societies. He has also been a member of Central Advisory Board of Education. He was awarded Padma Bhushan by the President of India for his contribution in the field of education and literature. He has been a member of the National Advisory Council constituted by Government of India between 2005 and 2008. Professor Miri has been nominated by President of India to the upper house, Rajya Sabha of the Indian Parliament. His main interest in philosophy is in the areas of philosophy of culture and moral philosophy. He has made very significant contribution to the understanding of issues relating to our tribal cultures in particular. Professor Miri's publications include a number of books such as Philosophy and Education, The Place of Humanities in Our Universities, Tribal India, Continuity and Change, 5 essays on Kant, among others. And he has a large number of articles published in journals like Mind, Philosophy and Phenological Research, Philosophical Studies, Journal of Value Inquiry, Indian Philosophical Quarterly, and Journal of Indian Council of Philosophical Research. He has also published widely in professional multidisciplinary journals. With that brief introduction, now we invite our esteemed keynote speaker, Professor Mrinal Miri, to deliver his speech on ethics, Indian and Western. Sir.
Thank you very much indeed, and namaskar to everybody. That wasn't quite a brief introduction. It was very sumptuous. I'm audible, am I?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was very nice listening to Professor Mishra after a very, very long time. Good.
I said Ramesh Chandra Sinha.
Sorry. There is a kind of Sinha, Mishra, sound very similar.
Yes, Mishra work.
I'm getting on, I'm older than you. I'm getting on in age, 82 years old. So kindly forgive my mistake. It was very nice meeting you. Listening to you after a very long time, you look a little different after all these years, but I don't recognize you anywhere. And wonderful to make your...
I have also attained 80 years of age.
Thank you. Now, let me begin my whatever I can call it. It was suggested that my talk will be entitled Ethics, Indian and Western. I'll reverse it a little bit. I would say that it is Ethics, Indian and Western. I'm afraid, the focus will not be on what has been said about the theme of this year's celebration of World Philosophy Day, but it might touch upon some of the aspects of the theme, but only in a marginal sort of way. So now let me begin. Now, moral philosophy in modern West has two main sources: religion and the so-called Enlightenment project, formally inaugurated by Immanuel Kant. For religion or theological ethics, morality is the gift of God to humanity. To be moral is to surrender to God's will and follow his sovereign rules for all humanity. Enlightenment, the domain of morality, for enlightenment, the domain of morality is strictly within the domain of the logos, reason and speech. Logos means reason and speech. As long as morality derived from religion requires overriding speechless faith in God, it is inviolable by reason and knowledge. But according to the Enlightenment intervention, morality is strictly within the domain of reason. It is secular. There are two prominent views emanating from the Enlightenment project. Morality and its universality are dictated by universal autonomous reason that we all know as Kant. Emotions and other non-cognitive properties of the mind are not part of the arena of morality. And secondly, the end of secular morality is happiness for all, and the greatest happiness of the greatest number, if you like. Since the concept of happiness is quite doggedly unclear, and there may be more views, some mutually incompatible, about the nature of happiness, then it may quite deceptively appear to begin with. The modern Western mind seems to have replaced the idea of happiness, because of its ambiguity, with that of liberty, as though liberty were an easier concept to grasp than happiness. The largely accepted modern view is that liberty must be the goal, or goal of non-theological morality. Morality consists in applying the right means to achieve this end. The morality of an action is strictly proportionate to its utility in the pursuit of this end. The details and shape of modern moral thinking in the West are a result of combining these two in subtly different ways. However, a particular combination of these two views has often led to a somewhat distasteful moral worldview. Thus, human beings on such a view are unique among all beings because they alone are endowed with reason, which enables them to decide between the right and the wrong, between the moral and the immoral. However, not all moral beings are endowed or equally endowed with reason, whereby they can validly distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad. There cannot therefore be proper, mutually responsive moral interaction between such human beings and the ones who are endowed with reason. There are two attitudes possible for the morally endowed to the ones who are not so endowed. One, a natural attitude of pity and sympathy for the latter, who after all are capable of suffering and pain. And two, an urge to lift their level of rationality so that one day they can become full members of the moral human community. The animal exemplifies the being who must be excluded from abstract equality, who has voice but no speech, the animal. The animal would historically include usually those humans who cannot reason and talk. Historically, massive examples of such animals would be such animal humans would include women, slaves, colonized, and the colonized, subaltern. You might have heard of the. Can you see? Anyway, I don't see. I seem to have disappeared from the screen. Slaves, salters, American Indians, and terrorists. This you will realize. This you'll recognize the famous white man's burden of European colonialism throughout the non-white world. It is quite natural for non-white civilizations to react sharply to this extraordinary attempt of the European colonials to degrade the amazingly rich and fecund ethical thinking, moral traditions, and practices of their colonial subjects. The two aims, of course, go together, one effectively setting the other in motion. But think of the Indian tradition, which is embedded in it the Dharma Shastras, the Gita, the epics of Ramayana and the Mahabharata, the Jaina and the Buddhist interventions. The idea that human beings are unique among all earthly creatures, in that they and only they have the gift of reason and the capacity to distinguish between the moral and the immoral, is common between the Western religious tradition, the so-called Abrahamic tradition, the Western modern and the Western modernity. The idea is also at the heart of Western secularism. And the claim is that this secularism, which is pervasive in the Western articulation of law, politics, economics, etc., has come to the non-European world from the West. The non-European world has appropriated, as it were, in a break from its own traditions, the Western idea of secularism and secular ethics. Also, the sacredness of the human, central to the concept of human rights, finds its meaning in the Abrahamic memory of the religions of the book and in a Jewish, but above all, Christian interpretation of the neighbor or the fellow man. The idea that secular morality is a unique contribution of the West to the non-Western world is unacceptable in the light of glaring contrary evidence. A quick look at the examples of the Chinese and the Indian traditions is sufficient to throw serious doubts on its validity. Take the Dharmic tradition. There are, of course, multiple versions and interpretations of this tradition. But one of the most plausible ways of looking at it is the suggestion that morality is not pre-given prior to human social life. The morality is prior to human social life. The complex contingencies of human life are the springboard of its emergence, and in the course of the interplay of the moral and other regulatory principles, the moral acquires an authority that goes beyond its contingent origins. Take the Apastamba Dharma Sutra of the Dharma Shastras. Right and wrong, dharma and adharma do not go about saying, here we are, and nor do gods or centaurs, that is Gandharvas, say, this is right, this is wrong. Let us very briefly look at Manu's exposition of dharma. As the poet Ramanujan says of Manu, I quote, one has only to read Manu after a bit of Kant to be struck by the former's extraordinary lack of universality. He seems to have no clear notion of universal human nature, from which one can deduce ethical decrees. To be moral for Manu is to particularize, to ask who did it, to what, and when. Unquote. A denial of universal, unique human nature is a summary rejection of the Abrahamic Enlightenment universal humanity. And to particularize is to place morality firmly in the domain of this mundane temporal world. There is, of course, for the greater part of the traditional Indian philosophical thought, the world beyond the transient world of humans and other beings, the eternal, never-changing world of the liberated soul, naturally free from the volatilities of the moral life. And this latter is firmly rooted in the contingencies of life in this world. Dharma is the regulator of human life through its ever-sensitive, ever-subtle particularities. It is because dharma is context-sensitive in this way that it can legitimately apply to the most intransigent of human conditions. We have, therefore, apada dharma, dharma of extremities. Sanatana dharma is the set of ethically regulatory principles that have come down to us from ancient times, which have been culled from the ancient texts like Upanishads, Vedas, Puranas, the Gita, and the epics of Ramayana and Mahabharata. And most importantly, reflection on the great variety and subtleties of human experience through time. Sanatana Dharma consists of general principles of action, but they are subject to modifications and changes in the light of the Dharma of the time and situation, Yoga Dharma. Neither monotheistic authoritarian universality nor the reason of enlightenment, but it is the generalities of Sanatana Dharma which guide man in his and her search for the good and fulfilling life in this world. An aside on monotheism. Monotheism hammers at human consciousness, demanding that it transcend itself, that consciousness transcend itself, that it reach out into a light of understanding so pure that it is itself blinding. In polytheism, these are the words of Nietzsche, the famous philosopher Nietzsche. In polytheism, lay the freedom of the human spirits, its creative multiplicity, the doctrine of a single deity whom man cannot play off against other gods and thus win open spaces for their own aims, is, in Nietzsche's words, the most monstrous of all human errors. Now I come to Gandhi as the exponent of modern Indian philosophy. Gandhi uses the deep and supple Indian tradition of ethical thinking. The central moral ideas that Gandhi derived from this tradition are, if I may say so, ahimsa, satyagraha, love, surrender of the sovereignty of the self. That's very important. Being as opposed to just human being, and so on. Fearlessness and the gift of fearlessness, which is also very important. All these ideas are interconnected in multiple ways, and Gandhi's use of them is extraordinarily inventive and original. I shall touch upon only some of the Gandhian ideas, which are profoundly opposed to the Western tradition of theological ethics of the Abrahamic foundation and its modern secular transformation. The casting of Christianity as the world religion par excellence, the supreme ethical religion professing the intention of ethical conquest of the world, was extraordinarily strange to Gandhi. According to the retrospective account provided in the autobiography and elsewhere in his youth, listening to the missionaries stand in a corner near the high school and hold forth, pouring abuse on Hindus and their gods. These are Gandhi's own words. He comes to the conviction that equality of all religions are equal except Christianity, which because of its intolerance could not be equal to Indian religions. Gandhi's attitudes to Christianity softened a great deal through the course of his life, and he made many very interesting and very distinguished Christian, even missionary friends. But he remained firm in his view that no religion can legitimately claim supremacy over other religions. There is no hierarchy of religions. No religion is superior or inferior to another. Gandhi took into consideration religions which he had intimate knowledge of: Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Jainism, and Buddhism. Among major religions he did not consider were Taoism and Taoism of China and Shintoism of Japan. He also did not consider any of the numerous tribal religions. Of his attitude to tribal religions, I have this story. On his visit to what now is Nagaland prior to India's independence, Gandhi was asked about what he thought of the Angami religion. Gandhi's reply was, I quote, I would like to join them in their prayers, unquote. Gandhi believed that large parts of religions, all religions of the world, are temporal and therefore are subject to change and are subject to historical, cultural contingencies. They are what may be called the grounded faith, held in place by performative continuity. But like all grounded belief, they are subject to change and critical review.
I think there is some network issue.
Yeah.
Sir, Minal sir is there. I think
Network.
he has joined.
Oh,
Sir, you are not audible. Minal sir, you are not audible, sir.
Sir, we cannot hear you. Difficult.
Sir, Minal sir.
सची मैंने उनको फोन भी किया है.
Mrinal Meer sir is not connected to audio. In the meantime, I'll request Professor Ramesh Sinha sir. There are certain questions in the chat box. So if he can answer those questions, sir, can we take up one or two questions in the meantime? Till sir connect again.
Okay.
Audience, participant, you can raise a hand and one by one we can ask the question if there is any query. Is sir audible? He's not audible to me.
Professor Miri is not audible, but he
Yeah.
is speaking.
You
So
please.
Professor Sinha can take up
Any questions? Any questions from the participants? Please raise your hand.
Yeah, there is one Yash who's been asking for a long time thoughts on veganism. Professor Sinha,
Yes,
sir,
please. Yes, please.
you can answer one or two questions, please.
Okay.
The question is from Utkarsh, sir. Utkarsh is asking, sir, can anyone say about Indian ethics and veganism?
Indian
Yash is
ethics.
also asking about thoughts on veganism.
Indian ethics and vegetarianism.
Yes,
Veganism.
yes.
Vegetarianism.
Veganism.
Okay. So, in the meantime, Professor Miri comes online. I have been asked by the organizer to reply some of the questions. So the first question which I have received is about Indian ethics and vegetarianism. Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
So India, why we say Indian ethics? First of all, ethics is concerned with the values, and values are certainly universal according to Kant. Kantian ethics is concerned with the universal values, not Indian, not Western, but I think. But why we call Indian ethics? First of all, let me make it clear. Ethics is certainly concerned with the culture. Values are not absolute. Values are not universal. Values are culture bound. So certainly, when we talk about Indian ethics,
This video, na, tell this woman, who's the administrator of the call. उनका video off करें.
Nandini ma'am, please mute your mic, please.
Sorry.
also, when we talk about Indian ethics, we mean that values are related to our country's time and space. There are certain values which are beyond time and space, but most of the values are within time and space. So certainly values are relative according to the postmodernist also. And certainly the Indian mindset is vegetarian because from the very beginning, Hinduism, or the, as we can say, Indianness, love, Indian love to be vegetarian, because since the tradition since the Vedic age, we find that hinsa, violence, is not admissible in our culture and religion. Sometimes in Ved it says Vedic hinsa, hinsa na bhavati. That was the contextual one. But we Hindus, they love not only human beings, but the living beings. Hinduism is concerned with the living beings, plants, even the most dogs and cattle. We do not believe in using other living beings for our end. But on the other hand, in Christianity, I find that they treat humanity, they love their neighbors, and we love the living beings. So the lower lives, they are used as instruments or they serve the higher lives. So animals, and that's why philosophically speaking, they are not averse to non-vegetarian. They are not averse to they love it. They go for non-vegetarianism, but Indians go for vegetarianism because of the basic difference in philosophy and the attitude. So love for living beings, as stipulated in Hinduism, and love for human beings, as stipulated in Christianity or in other Semitic religions, philosophically speaking. Secondly, the availability and the practice, and India is India believes in cultivation of lands and lives on vegetables and trees and fruits. So naturally, Indian ethics is not Indian ethics is true to the tradition, the Indian tradition, in which loving for all living beings. The trees have got lives, and the other animals, they have got lives. So this is a basic philosophical difference. It may be that some of the people may in India also dislike vegetarianism and like non-vegetarianism. That is up to the choice. And moreover, in the industrial city, in the changing scenario, the food habit may change or might be changing. But on the whole, the crux is that India loves vegetarianism, and it has got some sort of inner in-depth philosophy behind this cult of vegetarianism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for elaborating the answer in detail. There is one more question. That is the last question we will take. The question is from Ashutosh Vyas and also from Jagdish Rao, that the question is, a person has own values and he loves them dearly. So during a weak moment of a man's life, how to decide about what is ethically right and not right, especially in corporate profession in a short span of time.
A person has got deep
So a
Well-
person has its own value. But
own
during
value.
a weak moment, how to decide about what is ethically right and what is not right, especially in corporate profession.
So, very nice question. Everybody has got
Thank you, sir.
some sort of values. A dog may not be having values, but man must. So naturally, the man faces a crisis. The ethical dilemma, what to do and what not to do, so many times at so many places and in so many situations it comes. So man has got its own values. This is true that one can have a personal value. But if you live in society, and if you go with the norms, if you understand the meaning of the norms, the value may be of many kinds. Speed is also a value. So while leaving your office, you can love speed to reach your home. Nobody is going to interfere. That is your own value. That is not ethical value, but it is a value. Speed is a value. And especially in the technical age, in this age, speed has become value. I say not an ethical value. We cannot pass a judgment on speed as a value, but when it dashes somebody, when it crushes somebody, then only we pass a judgment that this man having such a great speed is not neither following rule nor have ethical sense. But most of the values, from where values comes? Can value come from my own person? No, not at all. Values are products. If you allow me to say, to use the terms products of interpersonal relationships, not actually products, but values are created out of the interpersonal relationships. Robinson Crusoe, living in desert, living alone, might not have values. So values come out of the interpersonal relationships. So naturally, you have to be considerate. If you say, this is my value and I will go with this, whether it harms others or not, so the value will turn into disvalue. If you are adamant with your own value, that this gives me satisfaction, this gives me pleasure. Pleasure, suppose man is always after pleasure. And pleasure is the watchword of morality. If he says that what gives me pleasure, that is valuable, that is moral, and what gives you pleasure, that is well and good for you, that is valuable for you. So can we safely say that what gives me pleasure is a moral value? What gives me pleasure is a value, and what gives you pleasure, it is your value. Can society run? Can we not lapse into sophism, sophistry? Or can we not lapse into individualism? So certainly some of the thinkers, they go on saying that selfishness is a virtue. Some of the outbox thinkers, philosophers may say that selfishness is a value. But if you talk in terms of ethics, ethics is concerned with the norms, and norms are certainly within the society. And in society, we have to be considerate. Otherwise, you will be. I can give two examples. In ethics, hedonism is the watchword for morality. So if some work gives pleasure, that is moral. If does not give pleasure, that is immoral. So Bentham says that man is a very selfish and crooked selfish, and nobody can sacrifice his little finger for others. So the only my pleasure is the standard of morality. What gives me pleasure, that is right. And what does not give pleasure, that is wrong. That is a prevalent in this industrial and the present situation. That is a crude fact. What gives me pleasure, what I like, that is good. And what gives me unpleasant, what gives me does not give me pleasure, that is not right. That is the go of the world. But that is not the tone and the temper of the ethics. So ethics is values are interpersonal, and naturally I consider that own values must be accepted by others too. I may have my own values, but it should be accepted by society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll take the last question. Utkarsh is asking, sir, is the Indian society becoming more superficial and less philosophical?
Oh. So Indian society is becoming more superficial. At the outset, I say no. But it requires what he means by superficiality. Can a country or a society become superficial if it has scriptures like revealed scriptures like Vedas, revealed scriptures like Upanishad? Can a society be called superficial if he goes with Ramayana, Bhagavad Gita, and Mahabharata? Can a society be called really superficial if it loves parents? Can a society be called superficial if it maintains the relationship, conjugal relationship for the whole life? On the other hand, can you say that other societies, others means you can say American society or European society, where family life is at stake. I can quote again Francis Fukuyama, the Harvard professor, who has asserted very clearly in his book, the end of the order. The end of the order. He is very postmodern. He is a Japanese thinker. He has got Japanese origin, of Harvard professor. He clearly says that if you want to give meaning to life, give meaning to society, and depth to the society, we have to go back to India, because in India, in spite of all limitations, in spite of poverty, in spite of every limitations, we have got a strong family system. God forbids that we should not lose this capital, social capital. I say social capital. We are very rich in social capital. The social capital, the one component is a family one. Which I pray God that we should not lose this social capital. So thank you. I think I should not elaborate much. So I hand it over to the organizers. Please.
Thank you, Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, for taking up all the questions and answering very, very efficiently. Thank you, sir, very much. It is unfortunate that we lost the contact with Professor Mrinal Miri ji, but we would definitely like to thank Professor Mrinal Miri ji for an excellent discourse on ethics, Indian and Western. We are indeed privileged to have Professor Miri as the keynote speaker. Before we go for the final agenda, that is vote of thanks, I would like to give a very brief gist of Professor Mrinal Miri ji's speech. Moral philosophy in the West has two basic sources: religion, that is Christianity, and the so-called Enlightenment, initiated by Immanuel Kant. Although the two sources seem fundamentally different, they have something very important in common. Namely, the man is absolutely unique among all earthly creatures. And the root of this uniqueness is man's possession of reason, which enables man to distinguish between right and wrong and good and bad. However, in the Indian worldview, the dharmic conception of the world and of humans can be the source of starkly different ethical views. Gandhi's ethical thought, which is located firmly in the dharmic tradition, is perhaps its most profound modern expression. With that, we come to an end to this celebration of World Philosophy Day. Now I invite Professor Shubhangi Vaidya, my colleague, to render the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Professor Nandini. It is my very pleasant duty to propose a formal vote of thanks after this, at the conclusion of this event on World Philosophy Day. At the outset, I record my great appreciation on behalf of the school and our profound thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Nageshwar Rao, who has always encouraged the school in all its endeavors and who has given us the go-ahead to conduct this program. Deep gratitude to our eminent invited speakers, Professor R.C. Sinha sir and Professor Mrinal Miri sir. As Nandini ma'am just said, it is unfortunate that we could not hear Professor Miri's speech due to a technical glitch. We apologize for it, and we do hope that we can request sir to come again and address us on the issues that we could not hear about today. Thanks to our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellors, all of the Pro Vice Chancellors who have taken the time to attend this session, to the directors of schools And I'd also like to thank the director of our school, Professor Shachi Shah, who has, as usual, rendered extreme support and has been at the very forefront of organizing all the various events and activities of the school. The organizing team, Professor Nandini Sinha Kapoor, who is the coordinator of the philosophy programs, my young colleague, Dr. Ashutosh Vyas, who is working very, very hard indeed in the to promote philosophy programs. I'd like to thank regional directors, many of whom I see here present today. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I'd also like to thank all the participants in this program, and particularly the participants who participated so actively by raising some very pertinent and interesting questions. And thank you so much, Sinha sir, for taking the time to answer each of these questions so patiently and in such detail. Thanks to my colleagues, my faculty, for their constant support, the supporting staff of SOITS. I'd also like to thank Mr. Rajesh, my colleague, Mr. Rajesh Sharma, the in charge of the PIU, and also Ms. Neetika Singh, who has designed the webinar poster. In conclusion, thank you to all who have taken the time to participate in today's events. And we do hope that you will always be with us in our future programs and our future sessions on matters pertaining to philosophy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. With this, I think seminar is, we will end the seminar. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sinha sir. Thank you, Manal sir. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you all the participants and our esteemed speakers. Namaskar.